The rain began as a murmur, a faint patter against the windshield, the kind of sound that usually lulled Evelyn Harper into calm. But tonight it carried no comfort. It grew heavier by the minute, turning into a pounding assault that blurred the narrow back road into streaks of black and silver. Her knuckles whitened against the steering wheel to her right. Her 12-year-old son Liam slept, his small body tilted awkwardly against the seatbelt, mouth slightly open, breaths shallow. He had eaten too much cake at his best friend's birthday dinner. Evelyn had laughed with him earlier that evening, but the laughter felt like it belonged to another lifetime, now somewhere far away from this desolate road in upstate New York. The GPS on her phone had stopped working half an hour ago. No signal, no street signs. Just an endless tunnel of wet asphalt hemmed in by towering pines. She leaned forward, squinting through the storm. For a split second, lightning lit up the road ahead, and in that white flash, she saw someone, a figure, tall and rigid, standing at the edge of the trees, not moving, not hiding, simply waiting. The light vanished, plunging everything back into shadow. Evelyn sucked in a breath and tightened her grip. "It's nothing," she whispered to herself. "It's just the storm." But unease clung to her like a second skin. She didn't have long to process it before a violent crack split the air. The massive trunk of an oak came crashing across the road with a sound like cannon fire. The SUV skidded sideways as she slammed the brakes. The seatbelt dug into her chest. Tires shrieked against wet asphalt until the car shuddered to a stop only feet from the fallen tree. Liam's head snapped up. "Mom, what happened?" His voice trembled, still half asleep. "Tree," Evelyn said breathlessly. It's blocking the road, don't worry." But her attempt at calm was betrayed by the way her hands shook. She shifted into reverse. The tires spun uselessly in the mud. She tried again. Nothing. The storm had swallowed the car whole. They weren't going anywhere. Liam peered through the fogged window. She followed his gaze. Beyond the skeletal branches and the sheets of rain, perched on the hill like a beast watching its prey, stood a mansion. Its outline was jagged and unnatural, as though time itself had gnawed at its walls. Broken towers clawed at the sky. The stone facade was streaked black with water and age. Most of the windows were dark, but in one a single upper window burned, a faint yellow glow. Evelyn's stomach sank. An occupied house meant help, a phone, shelter. But everything about the place screamed wrong. Still, the storm offered no mercy. She killed the engine. "Come on, Liam. We'll see if someone's there." They stumbled into the rain, shoes sinking deep into the soaked earth as they reached the gates. Iron bars rose above them, strangled by vines, flanked by weathered statues. Angels. At least, they were meant to be angels. The first was missing its eyes. 2 hollow craters stared out of its face. The next had a mouth stretched into a permanent scream. The last wore a smile far too wide, teeth filed sharp. The rainwater streamed down their faces like tears. Liam clutched his mother's arm. "Mom, I don't like this place." "Neither do I," she admitted, voice low. "But we don't have another choice." The gates groaned as she pushed them open. The sound echoed like a scream swallowed by the storm. The path up was worse. Grass had overgrown the stone walkway, slick with moss. Weeds brushed their ankles. They passed more statues, children, animals, twisted faces blurred by erosion. Evelyn avoided looking too long, afraid she might see something move. The mansion loomed larger with every step. Its walls were scarred, its roof jagged against the storm clouds. Up close, Evelyn noticed the windows weren't glowing warmly at all. The light was weak, sickly, like the last breath of a dying bulb. By the time they reached the porch, both were soaked through. Evelyn rapped on the heavy wooden doors. No answer. She knocked harder. "Hello, our car's stuck. We need help." The storm raged on. The mansion stayed silent. She was about to turn away when the door clicked. Then, Slowly, it swung inward. The hinges screamed as stale air rushed out, carrying the smell of mold, dust, and something faintly metallic like old blood. Liam took a step back. "Mom, I don't think we should." But before he could finish, Evelyn caught sight of the road behind them. Lightning flashed. The figure was there again, in the trees, watching. Her pulse hammered. "No," she whispered. "We're not staying out here." And with that, she pushed Liam gently inside. The door slammed shut behind them with the force of finality. The air inside was colder than outside, colder than it should have been. Evelyn's breath misted faintly in the dark. The foyer stretched upward, ceilings lost in shadows. Portraits lined the walls, faces she didn't recognize, painted eyes that gleamed as if wet. The chandelier overhead sagged under its weight of cobwebs. Somewhere deeper in the house, water dripped in an endless rhythm. But what froze her heart was the rocking chair in the corner. It moved back and forth, empty. Liam's whisper barely rose above the storm outside. "Mom, do you see that?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "Stay close." Her eyes darted to another corner. A mannequin stood beneath a cracked mirror, dressed in a moth-eaten wedding gown, its porcelain face tilted, mouth slightly open as though whispering a secret. And then, Evelyn, her name, soft female, drawn out like a lover's sigh. She spun, heart slamming against her ribs. "No one, Evelyn," the voice again, floating down the staircase that curled into darkness above. Her skin prickled. Her hands went numb. She forced herself to move, taking Liam's hand. We'll wait upstairs until the rain stops. That's all." Each step on the staircase groaned like a dying thing. Dust stirred in the air, and as they climbed, Evelyn felt it, the certainty that the house was not empty, that every painting, every statue, every shadow was watching, and that somewhere above, in the unseen rooms of Ashwood Manor, something was waiting for them. The staircase groaned beneath their feet as Evelyn and Liam climbed. Dust curled upward in pale spirals, catching the dim glow of the flickering chandelier below. Each step felt like an intrusion, like the house was aware of them, measuring their presence halfway up. Evelyn dared a glance back at the foyer. The rocking chair had stopped moving. Her stomach knotted at the top of the stairs. A long corridor stretched into darkness, the wallpaper peeled in long curling strips, revealing rotten wood beneath. The floor was warped, and from somewhere far down the hallway came the faint sound of dripping water. A single light bulb hung on a cord above them. It swayed gently, though no breeze stirred. "Which room?" Liam whispered. "First one we find." The second door on the right stood half open. Evelyn pushed it, wincing as the hinges shrieked. The bedroom beyond was choked in dust. Sheets covered the furniture, like corpses laid out for burial. A canopy bed stood against the far wall, its drapes moth-eaten and gray. It wasn't safe. Every nerve in her body screamed that it wasn't safe, but Liam was shivering, soaked to the bone, and his lips had gone pale. She had no choice. "Sit here," she said gently, guiding him to the bed. "I'll look for blankets." Liam nodded, curling up on the edge of the mattress. Evelyn turned toward the wardrobe in the corner. Its doors were tall, nearly reaching the ceiling, carved with ornate swirls that had darkened with age. Something about it made her uneasy. The handles gleamed faintly, though the rest of the metal was corroded. Her hand hovered over them. "Behind her," Liam whispered. "Mom." She glanced back. "What is it, sweetheart?" He was staring at the mirror on the dresser. His reflection stared back, except the eyes weren't his. They glowed faintly blue. Evelyn's breath caught. She stepped forward quickly, standing between him and the mirror. For a moment, her own reflection stared back at her, pale, tired, hair clinging damp to her face. Then, just over her shoulder in the glass, another figure appeared, a woman's skin, gray as ash, lips torn, teeth visible beneath. Black hair hung limp over her shoulders, dripping as though soaked in water. Her eyes were those same glowing, unnatural blue. Evelyn spun around. The room was empty. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She grabbed the corner of the mirror and yanked a sheet over it, her hands trembling. "We'll be fine," she said, though her voice cracked. "We'll be fine." But Liam's wide eyes told her he didn't believe her. Neither did she. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time seemed strange inside the house. The storm outside had dulled to a distant roar, but the silence within the manor was suffocating. Evelyn paced the room, trying not to listen, but she couldn't ignore it anymore. The whispers, faint, slithering, crawling along the walls. They weren't words she could understand, yet somehow she felt them, like cold fingers brushing against the back of her neck. Liam shifted on the bed. "Mom, do you hear?" The wardrobe creaked. Evelyn froze. The sound came again, wood straining, as though something inside was pressing against the doors. "Stay there," she whispered to Liam. She stepped toward the wardrobe, each movement deliberate, her pulse roaring in her ears. The handles rattled once, twice, then with a violent crack, the doors burst open. Evelyn stumbled back with a cry. Inside stood a figure. It was tall, faceless, its skin stretched tight and pale, like parchment, and in its hands it clutched a box. A wooden box, dark with stains Evelyn prayed weren't blood. The figure tilted its head, slowly, deliberately. Then it opened the box. Inside was a severed head. The eyes were wide, the mouth twisted in terror, as though the last scream still lived. On its lips, the head turned, and its gaze locked on Evelyn. Her body went rigid, every muscle locked in primal terror. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Then Liam screamed. The figure stepped out of the wardrobe. The box held forward like an offering. The head's lips twitched, and for a heartbeat, Evelyn thought she heard it whisper her name. She snapped, free of her paralysis. She lunged for Liam, dragging him off the bed. "Run!" They bolted into the hallway. The corridor stretched endlessly ahead of them. The peeling wallpaper seemed to writhe in the corner of her vision. Portraits along the walls, blurred faces shifting, eyes rolling to follow their flight. The floor buckled beneath their feet. A crack split open across the boards, deep and jagged. Evelyn nearly fell, yanking Liam up just before the wood gave way. From the darkness below, she heard something move, something wet, something hungry. They sprinted toward the staircase, desperate for the faint light from the foyer. But the house shifted. The corridor twisted, elongating. Doors that hadn't been there moments ago appeared, their handles rattling as though something inside was desperate to get out, and from behind them came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy. Evelyn didn't dare look back. "Don't stop," she gasped, clutching Liam's hand so tightly he winced. The air grew colder. Frost crawled along the walls. Their breaths billowed white in front of them. The whispers grew louder, blending together into something almost like laughter. Finally, they saw it, the staircase. But it wasn't the same. The steps were shifting, turning in impossible angles, folding in on themselves like some grotesque puzzle. The bottom twisted upward. The top vanished into darkness, and in the center of the staircase stood a figure made of bone. Its skeleton glistened as though wet, its skull tilted in a grotesque grin. When it saw them, it began to laugh, a dry rattling sound like stones grinding together. And as its laughter echoed through the manor, every light in the house flickered violently, then went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Evelyn clutched Liam to her chest. She couldn't see, couldn't move. The whispers surrounded them now, pressing in from every direction. Something brushed her arm. Cold, slimy. Liam screamed again, and in that abyss, a voice rose clear above the rest. "Stay, forever." The darkness inside Ashwood Manor was complete. Evelyn clutched Liam close, her own heartbeat a hammer in her chest. She forced herself to breathe, listening for any sign of movement. The silence after the whispers was worse than the whispers themselves. Then, somewhere to their left came a faint click. A bulb sputtered, casting a sickly yellow cone of light down the hallway. The sudden glow revealed the staircase again, though the skeletal figure was gone, but the air still smelled of rot. Evelyn guided Liam down the corridor, her free hand brushing along the peeling wallpaper. The texture was damp, almost pulsing beneath her fingers, as if the house itself was alive. They reached another door, this one tall and narrow, with paint flaking like old skin. She hesitated. She didn't want to open it. Every door in this house felt like a trap, but staying in the hallway wasn't an option. She twisted the knob. It groaned but yielded, swinging open to reveal what looked like a study. Inside, dust blanketed everything in sight. Tall shelves sagged under the weight of books, swollen with age. A fireplace loomed at one end, its hearth filled with cold ash. Above it hung a massive portrait, its frame cracked. Its canvas, YELLOWED. The portrait depicted a family, a stern-looking man in a black suit, a woman in a pale dress, her hair cascading dark against her shoulders, and between them, two children, their faces oddly blurred, as though the artist's brush had slipped. But Evelyn's breath caught when she noticed the woman's eyes. They were painted a vivid, unnatural blue. "Mom," Liam whispered, tugging her sleeve. "It's her, the woman from the mirror." Evelyn didn't answer. She couldn't tear her gaze from the portrait. The woman's lips seemed to curve upward the longer she stared, as though aware of being recognized. She forced herself to look away, scanning the room for anything useful. Her eyes fell on a desk near the window. Papers were scattered across its surface, brittle with time. She brushed the dust aside and saw handwriting, spidery ink that had bled into the parchment. Most of it was illegible, but a single phrase stood out, underlined so hard the page was torn. "She is the house." Evelyn's stomach twisted. She shoved the paper aside. On the floor near the desk lay an old leather-bound journal. Its cover was cracked, its strap half-eaten by mildew. She picked it up and opened it carefully. The entries inside were dated late 1800s. They described the construction of Ashwood Manor, commissioned by one Thomas Ashwood, the stern man in the portrait. The words grew more frantic with each page, the handwriting devolving into jagged scratches. "My wife, Eleanor, insists the walls must be sealed with her blessing. She walks the halls at night, whispering to the stone. I hear her voice in my dreams. The children no longer speak. Their eyes, they shine in the dark. She does not eat. She does not sleep. She stands at the window and watches, always watching. When I begged her to stop, she smiled and said, 'The house is mine now.'" Evelyn's hand trembled as she turned the page. The final entry was smeared, as though written in blood. "She will not let us leave." The rest of the page was torn. "Mom," Liam whispered again, "we shouldn't be here." Before Evelyn could reply, the fireplace cracked loudly. Both of them froze. The ash inside shifted. Slowly, something began to move within it. A hand, charred black, skeletal fingers clawed their way out of the ash, followed by the rest of a corpse half-burned, its jaw hanging at an impossible angle. It dragged itself from the hearth, ash raining off its body. Its eye sockets burned faintly blue. Evelyn dropped the journal. "Run." They fled back into the corridor, slamming the study door behind them. The impact rattled the portraits lining the walls, and that's when Evelyn noticed something new. The paintings had changed. Every portrait they passed once, depicting nobles and strangers, now showed the same face. Eleanor Ashwood. Her glowing blue eyes followed them down the hall, every frame capturing a different cruel smile. The whispers returned, louder now, threading through the air like a chorus. "Stay, stay, stay." The corridor bent sharply, revealing a set of double doors at the end. Unlike the rest, these were polished, They were rich and unblemished. Liam's grip on her hand tightened. "Mom, what if it's worse in there?" Evelyn hesitated. The doors loomed, almost regal, as though leading to the heart of the mansion. But behind them came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow, dragging. The charred corpse from the study was following. They had no choice. Evelyn shoved the doors open. The room beyond was vast, a grand dining hall. A long table stretched the length of the chamber, set with tarnished silverware and cracked plates. Dozens of chairs stood in perfect order, though most were draped in dust of cloth. At the far end of the table sat a figure, a woman in a pale, decaying gown. Her hair hung in wet strands, her skin sagged gray and lifeless, and her eyes glowed with that same unnatural blue. Evelyn's blood ran cold. The woman smiled. "Welcome home." The woman at the end of the dining table didn't move. She sat perfectly still, her pale hands folded in front of her, as though waiting for guests. But her eyes, those glowing, unnatural blue eyes, burned with a life of their own. Evelyn's knees weakened. She forced herself to stand firm, pushing Liam slightly behind her. The woman's lips parted. Her voice, when it came, was soft, lilting, disturbingly tender. "You've come home at last." Her words drifted through the cavernous hall, echoing unnaturally, as though the walls themselves repeated them. Evelyn's mouth went dry. "We're not staying." "Our car." The woman lifted a hand, silencing her instantly. The air itself seemed to obey, pressing against Evelyn's chest until she could barely breathe. "You don't leave Ashwood," the woman whispered. "Not once you've entered. The house chooses." Liam whimpered, clutching his mother's coat. Evelyn pulled him closer, her own fear a storm inside her chest. "What do you want from us?" Evelyn demanded, though her voice cracked. The woman smiled. The expression was wrong, too wide, stretching her cracked lips until blood welled faintly at the corners. "I want nothing," she said. "The house wants everything." As she spoke, the dining table shuddered. Plates rattled. Knives slid across the surface. Slowly, deliberately, the chairs turned toward Evelyn and Liam, as if unseen. Guests had risen to attention. Evelyn backed away. "We're leaving." The woman's head tilted, hair dripping as though soaked in unseen water. "Leave," she whispered, like he tried to leave. Her gaze flicked to the shadows behind her. Out of the darkness staggered the charred corpse. From the study, its body still crumbling with ash, it lurched forward and collapsed into the nearest chair, head lolling to one side. Its empty sockets still burned faintly blue. More figures emerged. A man in a blood-stained suit with his throat cut wide. A woman in a nurse's uniform, her jaw twisted grotesquely sideways. Two children, pale and silent, their eyes hollow pits. They filled the chairs one by one until the table was full. The air grew foul with the stench of rot and mildew. Evelyn gagged, clutching Liam tighter. The woman at the head of the table gestured gracefully, as though presiding over a banquet. "These are my family," she whispered. "They all tried to leave, and now they never will." Her eyes gleamed. "And neither will you." The doors behind Evelyn slammed shut with such force the entire hall shook. Liam screamed. Evelyn ran to pull the handles, but they were locked, fused together as though melted. The woman rose from her chair. Her movement was slow, deliberate, yet somehow she was at the center of the hall in less than a blink, standing only feet away. Her gown left trails of black water on the floor as she moved, though her feet didn't quite touch the ground. Up close, her face was a ruin, flesh gray and cracked like old stone, lips torn, eyes burning brighter than ever. Evelyn staggered back, shielding Liam with her body. The woman leaned close, whispering into Evelyn's ear, her breath cold as ice. "You remind me of me." Evelyn jerked away, trembling. "Stay away from us." The woman's smile deepened. "You can't run. You can't fight. You are already mine." At her words, the walls of the hall trembled. The chandelier above rattled violently, dust cascading down like snow. Portraits fell from the walls, their glass shattering across the floor. And then every corpse at the table turned its head in unison. Their empty eyes locked on Evelyn and Liam. The woman lifted her hand. Feast. The corpses lurched from their chairs, limbs jerking like marionettes, and staggered toward them. Evelyn grabbed Liam's hand. There was no time to think. She dragged him across the hall, dodging broken glass and collapsing furniture. One corpse lunged, grasping for Liam's arm with blackened fingers. Evelyn kicked it aside, the bones snapping with a sickening crack. But more surged forward. They reached a side door at the far end of the hall. Evelyn twisted the knob it turned. She shoved Liam through, slamming the door behind them just as cold hands clawed the wood. They stumbled into another corridor. It was narrower, lined with dust-choked sconces that sputtered faint flames. For a moment, Evelyn pressed Liam against the wall, both of them gasping for breath. "Mom," he whispered, his voice shaking. "She's not going to let us go, is she?" Evelyn looked into his terrified eyes, and for the first time since they entered Ashwood Manor, she couldn't lie. "No," she said softly, "she isn't." From behind the door, the woman's voice drifted through, soft and sing-song, as though she were already in their heads. "Run as long as you like, my sweet ones. You'll only run deeper into me." The house creaked in agreement, its walls groaning as though it were alive, and Evelyn finally understood. They weren't trapped in Ashwood Manor, they were trapped inside her. The corridor stretched endlessly, its walls sagging inward, as if the house itself wanted to swallow them. Evelyn held Liam's hand tight, whispering, "Stay with me. No matter what you hear, don't let go." They ran past warped doors that pulsed faintly, as though something alive pressed against them from the other side. From behind one door came muffled laughter, childlike, shrill, wrong. From another, a woman sobbing, the sound suddenly cutting off as if strangled mid-breath. Liam tugged at his mother's arm. "Mom, the house, it's watching us." Evelyn wanted to deny it, but he was right. The air itself felt aware, every groan of the floorboards like a warning dot at the end of the corridor. They found a narrow stairwell leading down, hidden behind a torn velvet curtain. Dust caked the steps, and a rancid stench of damp earth and rusted iron wafted upward. Evelyn hesitated. Basement. Liam swallowed hard. Do we have a choice? A distant slam echoed behind them, the corridor doors shutting one by one, as though hurting them. No, they didn't. They descended each. Step creaked under their weight, dust cascading around their shoes. The deeper they went, the colder it grew, until Evelyn could see Liam's breath fogging in front of him. At the bottom, they emerged into a stone chamber, lit by flickering candles that hadn't burned out despite decades of neglect. The walls were lined with shelves, jars, filled with dark, unidentifiable matter floated in cloudy liquid. Evelyn covered her mouth. Gagging. In the center of the room stood an altar. Its surface was stained black with old blood. Deep grooves carved into its side symbols she didn't recognize, but instinctively feared. And behind it, carved into the stone wall, was a mural. A woman, Eleanor Ashwood, kneeling in a circle of fire, her arms raised toward the sky. At her feet lay bodies, dozens of them, their faces twisted in agony. Above her loomed a figure without a face, holding a box in its skeletal hands. Liam's grip on Evelyn's hand tightened until his knuckles turned white. "Mom, that's her. That's the woman upstairs." "Yes," Evelyn whispered. "And that thing." She was worshipping it. The air shifted. A whisper slithered through the chamber, though no mouth spoke it. "Sacrifice." The candles flared. Shadows stretched long across the walls. Evelyn pulled Liam back, her eyes darting. "We need to get out of here now." But the chamber wasn't finished with them. The jars on the shelves began to rattle, their glass cracking. One shattered, spilling black liquid across the floor. From it crawled a hand skeletal, dripping tar. It clawed at the stone, dragging itself free. Another jar burst. A head rolled out, eyes still blinking, jaw moving soundlessly. Soon, the shelves collapsed one by one, disgorging pieces of the dead, hands, legs, torsos, twisting unnaturally as they knit together, forming something new. A figure rose 7 feet tall, stitched from dozens of broken bodies, its skin slick with bile. Its head was wrong, twisted backward, mouth gaping in an endless scream. Liam screamed. Evelyn yanked him behind her, her heart hammering so loud it drowned out thought. The monster staggered forward, dragging itself across the floor, and then, the mural on the wall began to move. Eleanor's painted figure turned her head. Her glowing blue eyes locked onto Evelyn and Liam. Her voice seeped through the stone. "You found my chapel, my offering ground. Do you see now? Do you see what the house hungers for?" The stitched abomination lurched toward them, arms outstretched. Evelyn's mind raced. There had to be another way out. She spotted a rusted iron door in the corner, half hidden behind rubble. She grabbed Liam's arm. "Run!" They darted across the chamber as the monster lunged, its hand slamming into the altar, splintering it in half. Blood sprayed from the cracks as if the stone itself bled. Evelyn shoved the iron door open. It groaned, but gave way. She pushed Liam through and followed, slamming it shut just as the monster's hand clawed at the frame. They collapsed in the darkness beyond, both gasping, Evelyn holding Liam so tightly he could barely breathe. The whispers followed, crawling into their ears. Like worms. "You cannot run. You cannot hide. You will feed the house. You will feed me." Evelyn pressed her hand against the cold stone, whispering through her tears, "Not if I burn it down first." The darkness around them stirred, revealing another staircase. This one lead not deeper, but up. And as they climbed, Evelyn realized with horror that the house had wanted them to find this place all along. The iron staircase groaned under their weight as Evelyn and Liam climbed, each step echoing like a heartbeat. Inside the walls, the whispers faded, but the silence left behind was worse. Every sound they made seemed amplified in the stillness at the top. They emerged into a long corridor, its walls lined with cracked portraits of the Ashwood family. Dust clung to the frames, but the eyes seemed new, too new. They followed Evelyn and Liam with a cold, unwavering stare. Liam kept his gaze low, his voice a whisper. "Mom, I don't like them looking at us." "Don't look back," Evelyn replied. A heavy oak door stood at the end of the corridor. Unlike the others, this one was carved with symbols, circles within circles, lines intersecting at unnatural angles. Someone had smeared ash across it in the shape of a handprint, burned into the wood itself. Evelyn hesitated before pushing it open. The room beyond was vast, lined floor to ceiling with shelves, a library. Dusty tomes and manuscripts filled every corner, though many were chained shut with rusted iron. A cracked chandelier swayed above, though no draft stirred it. For the first time since entering the mansion, Evelyn felt the oppressive weight of the house ease slightly, as though the walls were reluctant to follow them here. Liam exhaled shakily. "It's quiet." "Too quiet," Evelyn said, though she allowed herself a moment to breathe. They stepped inside. The door closed behind them on its own, with a soft thud. Evelyn tensed, but did not turn back. The shelves were lined with books written in languages she couldn't recognize, spidery, curling letters that seemed to writhe on the page. One book lay open on a pedestal in the center of the room. Evelyn approached cautiously, Liam clutching her hand. The pages were brittle, but the ink remained dark, fresh almost. Sketches filled the margins, circles, runes, diagrams of human anatomy twisted in ways no body should bend. Across the top of one page was a name, written over and over. Eleanor Ashwood. Evelyn whispered it aloud. Liam flinched. The text beneath described a ritual, sacrifice of the innocent, the binding of spirits to a single vessel, a pact with something called the Faceless One. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She turned the page. There, in exquisite detail, was the very altar they had just seen below the house, drawn centuries ago. The same symbols, the same stains. Her hands trembled. She built this house for it. The mansion isn't haunted, is the ritual. Every room, every wall, it's all part of the circle. As she spoke, the chandelier above swayed harder. The iron chains, clinked. Liam tugged her sleeve. Mom, look. He pointed to a portrait hanging on the far wall. Unlike the others, this one was untouched by dust. Eleanor Ashwood herself stared out from the canvas, her blue eyes shining unnaturally bright, as if painted with liquid sapphire. But it wasn't the paint that chilled Evelyn, was the way Eleanor's lips curled into a smirk, changing as though alive. The eyes shifted, focusing directly on them. A low hum filled the library, vibrating through the shelves. Suddenly, the chained books began to rattle. Their iron locks snapped open one by one, pages flapping wildly as whispers poured into the air. Dozens of voices, screaming, chanting, pleading. The library came alive with chaos. Evelyn grabbed Liam, pulling him toward the door. But the oak door refused to budge. The portrait of Eleanor moved. Slowly, impossibly, she stepped out of the canvas, her painted feet touching the ground, dripping pigment onto the rug. Her body shimmered, half paint, half flesh. Her voice was silken venom. You shouldn't have come here. But since you have, perhaps you can take their place. She gestured, and the books answered. From the flapping pages, hands clawed outward, skeletal, burned, bound in chains, reaching, grabbing, hungering. Evelyn swung the nearest chair into the shelves, knocking volumes loose. She seized one of the books that hadn't come alive yet, leather-bound journal, cracked and brittle, and hurled it into her bag. Something told her it mattered. Run, she screamed, pulling Liam away. But there was no way out. Eleanor advanced, her eyes glowing like twin beacons in the dark. The painted woman's grin widened. Liam clutched Evelyn's hand, voice breaking. Mom, what do we do? Evelyn backed them against the shelves, her mind racing. And then above them she noticed something. The chandelier. Its chain was rusted, swaying violently. Close your eyes, Evelyn shouted. She snatched a heavy iron bookend from the shelf and hurled it upward. The chain snapped. The chandelier plummeted, crashing into the floor between them and Eleanor. Scattering glass and flame, the books screamed. Eleanor staggered back, her form flickering like smeared paint underwater. Smoke filled the library. Evelyn pulled Liam through the haze, her lungs burning, until her hand found another door hidden between the shelves. She shoved it open and dragged him through, just as Eleanor's voice echoed after them, low and guttural. You cannot escape the pact. You are already mine. The door slammed shut. On the other side, Evelyn and Liam collapsed in another hallway, coughing, their faces streaked with soot. Evelyn held the journal tight against her chest, trembling. She didn't know why, but she felt certain of one thing. This book was the key. The hallway was suffocatingly narrow, the wallpaper peeling like rotting skin. Evelyn's breaths came fast, shallow, as she kept a firm grip on Liam's hand. Behind them, the muffled screams of the library still echoed, though the door they'd slammed had vanished. When Evelyn turned back, there was only bare wall. Mom, Liam whispered, voice trembling. The house doesn't want us to leave. Evelyn swallowed hard. Then we make it want us dead trying. They pressed forward. The corridor stretched endlessly, lantern sconces burning with a sickly green flame. The floorboards creaked beneath each step, but when Evelyn looked down, she realized the wood wasn't wood at all. It was bone lung, pale femurs, laid in perfect rows, cracked under their weight. She forced herself not to react, not to frighten Liam more. But he noticed. He always noticed. "Why are we walking on bones, Mom?" Her throat tightened. "Don't look. Just walk." At last, the corridor ended at a staircase spiraling upward into darkness. It coiled like the inside of a seashell, impossibly tall. Evelyn took the first step, clutching the leather journal against her chest. It felt warm, too warm, as though alive. Step after step, they climbed. The stairs creaked, but never ended. After what felt like minutes, then hours, Evelyn realized they hadn't ascended at all. The same torn tapestry appeared again and again. Her legs trembled. Liam's hand grew clammy. "This isn't real," she whispered. "It's a trick." She pressed her palm against the wall, tracing the symbols carved faintly into the stone. Runes, circles, the same sigils from the book. The book. She yanked it from her bag and tried to open it again. The cover refused, bound by invisible force. Liam reached out to touch it. His small finger brushed the edge and a paper-thin cut opened on his skin. A single drop of blood fell onto the leather. The book shuddered. Its locks snapped. Pages fluttered open violently, stopping on a diagram that made Evelyn's stomach churn. A drawing of the very spiral staircase they stood upon. Beneath it, the words scrawled in jagged handwriting. "The spiral feeds on fear. The way forward is not up, but through." Evelyn froze. Through. She looked at the wall. Solid stone. The chandelier crash from the library echoed in her memory. Sometimes destruction was the only key. She lifted the iron bookend, still gripped in her free hand. Without hesitation, she slammed it against the wall. The stone cracked, again and again, until at last a fracture split wide, revealing not brick and mortar, but black void. Like torn fabric leading into nothingness. The staircase shivered, groaned. Whispers rose, deafening, clawing at their ears. Liam panicked. "No, we can't go in there." Evelyn crouched, clutching his shoulders. "It's the only way. Trust me." The void pulsed, sucking the air inward like a hungry mouth. Evelyn took Liam's hand, and together, they leaped. Darkness swallowed them whole. For a moment, there was silence. No bones, no whispers, nothing but black. Evelyn thought she had gone blind until her feet struck the ground, soft and wet. They stood in a new room. The smell hit first, copper and decay. The walls dripped crimson, as though they were inside the belly of something living. Shapes hung from the ceiling, corpses, hundreds of them, bound in chains. Faces twisted in agony. Liam buried his face against her chest, sobbing. "Mom, I don't want to be here anymore." Evelyn held him tight, her own tears stinging. "Neither do I, baby. Neither do I." But from the far end of the chamber, a voice answered, low and guttural. "You already belong here." Something moved between the bodies, tall, faceless. Its skin stretched taut over bone, and in its hands, it carried a box. A wooden box, leaking with black ichor, humming with power. The Faceless One stepped forward, the corpses swaying as if in reverence, and Evelyn finally understood. This wasn't just Eleanor's master. This was the heart of the pact. The mansion hadn't trapped them. It was delivering them. The Faceless One loomed at the far end of the chamber. Chains rattled overhead as the corpses swayed, their lips twitching in silent mockery. Its eyeless head tilted, focusing on Evelyn and Liam as though it could see them perfectly in its hands. The wooden box pulsed, almost alive. Thick black ichor leaked from its seams, dripping onto the blood-wet floor, each drop hissing like acid. Liam clutched Evelyn's arm, whispering through tears, "Mom, it has no face." Evelyn pulled him behind her, every muscle trembling but unwilling to bend. "Stay back." The Faceless One didn't advance. It simply raised the box, holding it out like an offering, and Evelyn felt it. A pull, a hunger. The same sensation she'd felt in the stairwell when the journal had opened itself. But this was stronger, like invisible hands clawing into her chest, dragging her forward. She fought it, teeth gritted, heels digging into the sodden ground. But her hands betrayed her. Slowly, against her will, they began to rise. "Mom," Liam yanked her sleeve. "Don't touch it. Please don't." His voice broke the trance for a heartbeat. Evelyn forced herself to look down at him. His small face streaked with tears, eyes wide with terror. That was enough. She ripped her gaze from the box and hurled the iron bookend straight at the Faceless One. The weapon clanged uselessly to the ground before reaching it, as though the air itself bent around the creature. It didn't flinch. Instead, the box split open with a splintering crack. A wave of freezing air blasted the chamber. The corpses above convulsed violently, mouths tearing open in one collective scream that shook the marrow of Evelyn's bones. Inside the box, something writhed, not an object, a presence. A storm of shadows poured out, coiling like snakes, their edges dripping black flame. They didn't move at random, they moved with intent, circling Evelyn and Liam. One tendril shot forward, brushing Liam's cheek. He screamed, staggering back. Evelyn swatted at it, her hand burning as though touched by fire, but she shoved it away. "Run!" she screamed, dragging Liam toward the far side of the chamber. But the chamber had changed. The walls of dripping flesh had melted into infinite black corridors, twisting and shifting. There was no exit. The shadows closed in. The Faceless One stepped closer, silent, patient, and then the journal in Evelyn's bag ignited, not firelight, blinding, golden, searing against the dark. The journal tore itself open, pages flying as though caught in a hurricane. Words glowed. Across them, bleeding out in jagged script, "Ashwood's soul is bound in the box. Break the vessel, free the damned, fail, and be consumed." Evelyn gasped, clutching the book, her knuckles white. She looked at the Faceless One again. Its long fingers stroked the box lovingly, like a parent soothing a child. The truth hit her with paralyzing clarity. This wasn't just some monster. This was the guardian of Ashwood's secret. The box didn't just hold power. It held every soul the mansion had ever claimed, and now it wanted hers. The shadows surged, striking like fangs. Evelyn shoved Liam behind her and screamed with a fury born of terror and defiance. She raised the journal high, its golden glow clashing violently with the Faceless One's darkness. The chamber split with light and shadow, corpses thrashing, as the entire mansion seemed to convulse. And in that storm, Evelyn made a decision. If she couldn't escape Ashwood, she would burn it from the inside. The golden glow of the journal clashed violently with the black ichor spilling from the box. Shadows whipped around the chamber, twisting into grotesque forms, screaming in agony as they lunged at Evelyn and Liam. Evelyn gripped the journal tightly, chanting the strange words written across its pages. Her voice trembled, but it held power. The shadows shrieked and recoiled. The Faceless One advanced, its steps silent but deliberate, each movement exuding menace. It raised the box high above its head, and Evelyn felt the pull again, magnetic, irresistible. "You cannot win." The presence whispered in every language, at once. "Every soul here is mine, and now, yours." Evelyn swung the journal forward. Light erupted from the pages, blinding and searing. The shadows hissed and shrieked, curling away as the golden glow spread. Liam clutched her side. "Mom, it's a tendril of darkness shot at them." Evelyn pushed Liam aside and blocked it with the journal. The tendril struck the pages, sizzling, and a shockwave threw her backward. The Faceless One slammed the box onto the ground. A deafening crack echoed through the chamber as black liquid surged outward, forming a towering wall of shadows. Evelyn scrambled to her feet, blood and sweat mixing on her face. She realized something: the journal didn't just repel the darkness, it could contain it. She focused, chanting again, reading aloud the words that glowed across the page. The shadows faltered, screaming in defiance, writhing as though alive then. The impossible happened. The box itself began to crack. Golden light burst from its seams, burning against the black ichor, forcing the Faceless One backward. "Mom, it's opening!" Liam screamed. Evelyn's heart pounded. She ran toward the box, lifting the journal like a shield. She pressed it against the split, chanting the final phrase. The box trembled violently, then exploded in a wave of light and heat. Shadows screamed as they were pulled into the glow, twisting, writhing, then vanishing. The Faceless One roared silent, faceless, yet screaming nonetheless. Its form collapsed, unraveling like a torn tapestry. The corpses that had hung above the chamber fell to the floor, lifeless, drained of energy. For a moment, the world was still. Evelyn fell to her knees, clutching Liam, both of them shaking and gasping. The chamber was empty, silent, cold, but free from the pressing darkness. Then came a faint whisper, almost gentle, from nowhere. "Thank you." Evelyn froze. She realized it wasn't Eleanor. It was the voices of the souls trapped in the mansion for centuries. Finally released, she looked down at Liam. "It's over," she whispered, though her body trembled from the ordeal. But somewhere, deep in the ruins of Ashwood Manor, a faint blue glow pulsed in the shadows. A reminder that the house was never truly gone. The morning sun broke through the thick fog surrounding Ashwood Manor. Evelyn and Liam stumbled onto the overgrown lawn, dirt and ash clinging to their clothes, their skin slick with sweat and fear. The mansion behind them stood silent, its dark windows staring like empty eyes. The air was still, but Evelyn could feel it. A weight had lifted, yet a presence lingered, subtle and watchful. Liam clung to her side. "Mom, is it really over?" Evelyn hugged him tightly, her body shaking. I think so. We're free, Liam. We're really free." They walked down the cracked stone pathway, toward the road. Evelyn dared a glance back at the mansion. The morning light glinted off a window on the top floor. A faint blue glow pulsed, steady, deliberate. Her stomach turned cold. They reached the road and found a car parked, abandoned but running. Evelyn pulled Liam inside. Her hands trembled as she started the engine. The radio flickered, static at first, then a faint whisper. "You cannot leave." Evelyn slammed the brake, heart hammering. The voice was soft, almost teasing, but it carried the weight of centuries. Liam buried his face in her chest, sobbing. "I promise," Evelyn whispered, clutching the steering wheel. "We won't look back." The car roared down the winding road, dust and gravel spraying in their wake. Behind them, Ashwood Manor receded into the morning mist, and yet the mansion seemed to watch. Later, when they were finally safe, Evelyn opened the journal. Its pages were blank, except for one final phrase that had appeared in shimmering gold ink. "Some doors never close." Evelyn shivered, closing it tightly. She didn't speak. Liam leaned against her, exhausted and silent. But even as they drove away, the mansion's silhouette lingered in their minds. Shadows twisted in the corners of their vision. Soft whispers followed them in the wind. Eleanor Ashwood was gone, yes, but not vanished, not entirely. Somewhere deep within the walls of Ashwood Manor, her blue eyes still watched, waiting, and Evelyn knew, with a chill that would never leave her, that one day it might call again. The road stretched ahead, sunlight cutting through the mist, but a shadow of Ashwood Manor remained imprinted on their souls, forever.